Coming up today, as the prosecution kicks off its probe, tempers flare at the National Assembly over the snowballing bribery list scandal that allegedly involves ruling party, former and incumbent government officials. The birthday of late North Korean founder Kim Il-sung is on the horizon, but experts say the North will likely refrain from straining its military muscles this year. Plus, Russia repeals a ban prohibiting the delivery of air defense missiles to Iran, sending Israel into a frenzy. These stories and more coming right up. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, April 14th here in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning is the brewing scandal over a list that claims some high-profile politicians took bribes from a recently deceased businessman. Korea's ruling and opposition parties locked horns over the list at the National Assembly on Monday. Prosecutors who kicked off their probe on the same day say no stone will be left unturned in their investigation. Our Park Ji-won starts us off.
The first day of the Parliament's four-day interpellation session centered around a high-profile scandal that started with a note written by former Gyeongnam Enterprises CEO Song Wan-jong, who committed suicide last week. The note contains the names of heavyweight politicians, including Prime Minister Lee Wan-gu, former and current key aides to President Park Geun-hye, and four other ruling Saenuri Party politicians who allegedly took bribes from Song. While the prosecution launched a full-scale investigation into the allegations on Monday, the main opposition party has vowed to use the interpellation session to probe deeper into the scandal. During Monday's parliamentary session, Chung Cheong-rae, a two-term opposition party lawmaker, called for the resignations of two people on the list.
I think Presidential Chief of Staff Lee Byung-gi and Prime Minister Lee Won-gu should step down and be investigated. In their positions, they can both influence the investigation. The Prime Minister cannot influence the prosecution's investigation.
Meanwhile, the ruling Saenuri Party stressed that the Gyeongnam CEO's network stretched beyond the ruling party to include people from the opposition camps. One ruling party lawmaker, Kim Sung-tae, also called on the prosecution to widen its net and include more people in the opposition camp in its investigation, arguing that the late businessman was given two presidential pardons by the late President Roh Moo-hyun.
Isn't it rare for a person who was convicted of a crime to be pardoned twice?
It is pretty rare.
On Sunday, President Park Geun-hye called on the prosecution to be thorough in its investigation. Politicians whose names are on the list, including the president's two key former aides and Busan's current mayor, have vowed to fully cooperate with prosecutors. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The Korean government has denounced Sunday's armed attack on its embassy in Tripoli, in which two Libyan police officers were killed. At an interagency meeting on Monday, officials assessed the situation and discussed ways to protect Korean nationals in Libya and other parts of Africa and also the Middle East. As a tentative step, a delegation will visit the Middle East to review the situation there and hold a simulation drill for countering similar events in the future. The Foreign Ministry is also asking all of the 30 or so Korean nationals still in Libya to leave the country. The case is still under investigation, but a ministry official said the government is not ruling out the possibility that Sunday's attack was targeted at the embassy itself. April 15th, this Wednesday, marks the birthday of late North Korean founder Kim Il-sung. The regime usually uses this occasion to showcase its military prowess. But experts believe Pyongyang will probably refrain from such actions this year. Hwang Sang-hee tells us why.
3 years ago, fresh into power, young North Korean leader Kim Jong-un launched the Una-3 space rocket. The defiant attempt was a failure, but it was followed by the regime's largest military parade ever, showcasing nearly 1,000 weapons. The events had been organized to mark the Day of the Sun, the April 15th birthday of the young leader's late grandfather and North Korea founder Kim Il-sung. This year, with the date fast approaching, the regime remains relatively calm. North Korea's state-run media reported Monday that the military held a ceremony on Sunday to reaffirm its loyalty to Kim Jong-un ahead of the Day of the Sun. Experts don't expect any provocations from Pyongyang in the next couple of days.
So I think there's a strong need for the regime, as well as for Kim Jong-un, to establish strong reputation as a strong leader who doesn't really care. I think Kim Jong-un has consolidated his power, so he has less of a need to show to the rest of the world who the leader is.
Some say the next North Korean provocation will come just before the young leader's first overseas trip. That could be next month, when Kim is widely expected to travel to Moscow to attend the Victory Day ceremony, marking the 70th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany. But not everyone thinks so.
It will be against his own interest to launch another provocation that actually might make Putin look bad to the international community. So I think Kim Jong-un will try to behave in the best manners this time.
Even if North Korea does test-fire a missile, experts doubt that the regime will launch a long-range rocket. That would violate a handful of UN Security Council resolutions and further isolate Pyongyang from the international community. 황상희, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has not fully consolidated his power and is looking to borrow from South Korea's economic strength in order to stabilize his regime. This is according to Ken Gores, who is a senior North Korea analyst at the Center for Naval Analyses in the United States. In an interview with South Korea's Yonhap news agency on Monday, Mr. Gores said this is why Pyongyang is refraining from launching major provocations against the South, as it wants to improve inter-Korean relations. He also said that if the regime fails to bring in more money and buy support from within the regime in the next few years, Kim Jong-un could start to lose his grip on power. Japan has taken one step further in revising a new security legislation law that will significantly expand the range of operations of the country's self-defense forces that they can carry out overseas. According to Japan's Kyodo news agency on Monday, the Japanese government has decided to name the new law the International Peace Support Law that, if passed, will allow Tokyo to dispatch its self-defense forces to territories in conflict-hit areas overseas at their own discretion. Japan plans to submit the bill on the legislation to the Diet in mid-May. Should it pass, it will remove many of the restrictions currently imposed on Japan's national security policies. Now, Korea's manufacturing sector has been having quite a rough ride over the past couple of years. But while annual production growth has recently stumbled, the number of people employed in the industry is actually at its highest point since the late 1990s. Kim Min-ji reports.
The number of jobs in Korea's manufacturing industry has been on an upward trend for 32 straight months, hitting a 17-year high in February. That's what Statistics Korea data shows despite the sluggish economy weighing industrial output down. Over 4.4 million people had jobs in the sector, up 3.7% from a year ago. The industry has regularly added new jobs since the mid-1970s, before job growth slowed in the wake of the Asian financial crisis and then again during the 2008 global financial crisis. Job expansion picked up in 2010 on the back of economic recovery and has since been on the rise.
Before 2008, structural reforms in manufacturing limited the number of jobs, even though the industry was expanding. But after the financial crisis, the better the industry did, the more jobs were created, especially in key sectors such as automobiles and machinery.
What's notable now is that industrial output has slowed sharply. Production rose just 1.4% in 2012 and since has only recorded annual growth in the 0% range. This has raised concerns that the phenomenon could lead to employment without growth.
The number of jobs has increased at a fast pace, and one factor behind this is the rise in the number of people working shorter hours. The pace of industrial output hasn't been able to meet job expansion because it doesn't necessarily mean more labor input.
Experts say that with more people actively looking for work, especially those in the baby boomer generation who have to prepare for retirement, employment figures will likely continue to rise for some time. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's working population is expected to drop at one of the fastest paces in the Asia-Pacific region over the next quarter of a century. The World Bank says the number of Koreans aged 15 to 64 is forecast to dwindle by over 15% from 2010 to 2040. Only Korea and Hong Kong exceeded the 15% mark. The global institution added that Korea also has the world's second fastest aging population after only Vietnam. Russia has lifted its ban on delivery of sophisticated air defense missiles to Iran. Officials say the delivery of the S-300 missile system could pave the way for further arms sales between the two countries. The Kremlin had signed an $800 million contract to sell Iran the missile system in 2007, but delivery was scrapped in 2010 after the United Nations slapped sanctions on Tehran over its nuclear program. Moscow's latest move has drawn sharp criticism from Israel and raised US concerns as it comes as world powers continue nuclear talks with Tehran. An Israeli government official said Russia's lifting of the ban was a direct result of the recently inked framework nuclear deal as it helped legitimize Iran. Korea is well known around the world for its high-tech society, but being one of the most wired countries in the world also has its pitfalls. More and more children in Korea are falling foul of smartphone addiction, a problem that can severely disrupt their family and academic lives. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Heads down, eyes fixed, fingers tapping and scrolling, people walking while glued to their smartphones. It's a common sight on the streets of Seoul, and many of them are young kids. Studies show adolescents are more prone to smartphone addiction than adults. In fact, 3 out of 10 were found to be highly addicted and in need of professional treatment, according to a survey last year of 15,000 Koreans between the ages of 10 and 60. If the addiction is left untreated, it may lead to a gradual change in one's personality, says Park Sung-young, a counselor at the Korea Internet Addiction Center, which could in turn harm their relationships with friends and family. More than half of children surveyed said they've argued with their parents because of their smartphone use and thinks it hinders their ability to concentrate on their schoolwork. In response to this worsening epidemic, the Science Ministry and 8 other related ministries said they'll develop specialized school counseling programs to treat young addicts. The government is also providing up to $454 to cover treatment for children from low-income families. Parents who fear their child may be addicted can receive help from various public programs, like the Korea Internet Addiction Center, which provides consultations free of charge. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's a common irritation these days. You're out and about and your phone battery is running low with no way of charging it. Well, those days may soon be over thanks to some groundbreaking work by a group of Korean researchers. Our Park Se-young has the details.
This little strip can turn your body heat into electricity. Created by a group of researchers from KAIST, the device was developed with a wearable phone charger in mind and can be incorporated into clothing. Early this year, the wearable thermoelectric generator won the UNESCO Net Explo Award, putting it at the top of a list of 10 IT innovations expected to change the world. But the device still had its problems. It wasn't able to store very much of the electricity it generated. Now a team from Korea's Institute for Basic Science has solved that problem using high-density particles that trap heat but allow electricity to flow through.
This thermal element is twice as efficient as previous ones. It's also meaningful that we were able to achieve this at room temperature.
Previous generators could only be used at high temperatures, and the new material can easily be mass-produced, so researchers see other applications for the technology in a variety of industries.
Not only can we take human body heat, we can also take wasted heat from electronics, cars, and factories and turn it into electricity.
The finding, published in the Science Journal, is expected to make wearable devices like smartwatches more viable for use in daily life. It also opens doors to further research on green energy sources that make good use of wasted heat. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
And that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. We do hope to see you at our next newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.